let's get to our very first guest to keep us all on track. Dessert will be coming out. But right now, I met this young lady just a few minutes ago, and I just fell in love. Her name is Abby Hirsch. She is, yes, let's hear it for Abby. Abby. I said to Abby, I was introduced to her, and I go, Abby, are you nervous? She goes, no. So we are in good hands. Abby is a volunteer coach at the Playhouse with the Young Athletes Program, a Special Olympics athlete, a global messenger, and she is an inspiration to so many of you here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to Abby Hirsch.
Good evening. My name is Abby Hirsch, and I was the guest speaker at the first ever GiGi's Playhouse Twin City Gala in March 2011. I thought you had a great crowd back then, but wow, this is fantastic. Since then, I was selected to be a commencement speaker at my 2012 graduation from Exeter High School. I am also a global messenger and ambassador for Special Olympics Minnesota. And I am honored to be representing the Special Olympic athletes of Minnesota at Capitol Hill Day in Washington, D.C. in March. In addition, I also volunteer coach for the GiGi's Playhouse Young Athletes Program. I have been a part of the program on Wednesday nights since the first class started in the spring of 2013. I love to help the young athletes develop their skills and show the athletes, parents, and fellow volunteers what can be possible. Tonight, I am honored to introduce our guest speaker, John Franklin Stevens. He is a fellow self-advocate and Special Olympics athlete and global ambassador. Frank has shown what it means to have a voice and use it globally to advance our special needs community. Take a look at this video to see what I mean.
He's a 30-year-old Special Olympian with Down syndrome, and he wrote a letter that got posted on the Special Olympics blog. In it, John explained what the R word means to him. Why did you decide to write her a letter?
I just want to get people like Miss Coulter to understand that using the R word as an insult means she is using people like me as a symbol of slow, shallow, and stupid.
And Frank, have you heard back from her?
I have not.
It'll be interesting to see if she does respond. So Frank, why do you think people still use the R word?
They still use the R word because they don't seem to understand how hurtful that word is.
What's your final message to those that may not understand how hurtful it is? What would you like to say to them tonight before we let you go?
Stop saying it.
Plain and simple.
Ladies and gentlemen, Frank has brought along a special friend to introduce him tonight. Thank you.
It looks wonderful. This is a truly special evening, and we are delighted to celebrate it with so many people from so many different walks of life. It is not often that you get Dikembe Mutombo, Steve Case, Stevie Wonder, all in the same room. In fact, that may be the first time that they were ever in the same sentence. And Frank Stevens is a Special Olympian from Virginia, and he's proud to be a global messenger. Once spoke before a crowd of 10,000, writes eloquently about the pain and exclusion that comes when others don't accept you or treat you with the respect every human being deserves. I'm very lucky, Frank has written. Even though I was born with this intellectual disability, I do pretty well and have a good life. I live and work in the community. I count as friends the people I went to school with and the people I met in my job. Every day, I get closer to living a life like yours. Being compared to people like me, he once wrote, should be considered a badge of honor. No one overcomes more than we do and still loves life so much. Give Frank a big round of applause.
Hello. Well, thank you, Abby. And thank you, Mr. President. Together, they make a great team, don't they? Besides, I always enjoy hearing anyone talk about my favorite subject, me. I am thrilled to be speaking to such a great crowd here at the Mall of America in Minneapolis in February. Where else can you expect to brave ice and ISIS at the same time? Seriously, I am honored to be here tonight, to be a part of this gala for GiGi's Playhouse. You are paving the way for a whole new generation of individuals who, like me, are blessed to be 2.1% greater in every cell of our bodies than you mere common people. You can tell the teachers in the crowd they are They are the ones checking my math. Let's see, 47 chromosomes instead of 46. So that's 1 divided by 47. Yep, that's 2% greater. I really am going to talk about the differences tonight. I'm going to talk about the differences so tiny that they fit inside a human cell. I'm going to talk about other differences that are so large that they span a generation. Just remember, as I am talking, that none of these differences are too small to matter, or too large to be spanned by the hearts of people like you. We will start with a set of differences that have led me to be a Special Olympics athlete and global messenger. When my body was first forming, when the first 2 cells divided, each of them had one extra tiny piece of a material called a chromosome. People like me tend to be a little shorter because our arms and legs are shorter than most people's. Our faces are usually a little bit flatter than most people's because our cheekbones and noses don't stick out from our faces as much. All that adds up to a person who is a little bit uncommon. In my case, uncommonly handsome. I really want to talk about tonight is another kind of difference. The difference that groups like GiGi's Playhouse and Special Olympics and the Global Down Syndrome Foundation have made in the lives of people like me. To understand the way those groups are changing the world, I want to tell the story of what a difference a single generation has made. If I had been born when my dad was born, things would have been very different. Here's what it would have looked like if I had been born in 1950. I would have been sent to live in an institution. I would not have gone to school. I would not have learned to read or write. I would have had little or no contact with common people, with common society. If I did have contact with people like you, we would have both have been afraid of each other. I would have received little or no health care. I probably would have not have lived much past 20 to 25 years. Most of all, my life would have had little to inspire hopes and dreams. None of that is exaggeration. That is what life looked like for someone with intellectual disabilities in the 1950s in America. It's what it still looks like in parts of the world. Then along came Special Olympics in the 1960s, and everything began to change. Most of all, a miracle happened. We, you and I, learned not to be afraid of each other. Nothing has been the same since. Okay, here comes the part where I tell you about my life and what a wonderful ride it is. If it sounds like I'm bragging, it's because I am. But I don't know how else to show you what is possible now. Okay, here goes. This is my life. I was born in a log cabin deep in the Ozark Mountains. Well, I was born in a hospital in Fayetteville, Arkansas, but that log cabin thing sounds so presidential, don't you think? Seriously, so how has my life been different because of people like you? Well, here goes. I lived with my family. I went to school with everyone else. I learned to read and write. I competed in sports wearing my school colors. I was allowed to take drama classes with the common kids. I acted in school plays. I learned to communicate my thoughts and dreams. I learned to fight for the right to be treated like everyone else. I became a spokesman for others with intellectual disabilities. I have spoken to crowds as large as 10,000 people. I have appeared on television and radio many times. After political commentator Ann Coulter publicly referred to the president as a retard, I engaged in an internet debate with her that lasted for over 2 weeks and went viral. $3.2 million people followed me on the internet. My story of those events appears in a book called Stand Up that has won two book awards and became the bestseller, a bestseller on Amazon. When I was in middle school, I wanted to be included in a creative writing class. But the teachers didn't think that I could do that kind of work. Now my writing is being used to teach that course in schools all over the country. I have been to the East Room of the White House twice. And I didn't have to jump the fence either time. I was actually invited. I was one of a dozen Special Olympians honored at a White House dinner. The president quoted me in his speech that night. Katy Perry was 6 feet away from me as she sang, "Baby, you are a firework." She was so hot. I auditioned for and won a lead role in a movie about bullying, forgiveness, and acceptance. That movie is called touched by grace. I just returned from a tour to promote the opening of the film in over 100 theaters in England and Scotland. But because of the movie, I got to walk the red carpet. At the Emmy Awards show in Hollywood this summer, the ladies were so hot. By the way, I have never been as happy as I was the summer we shot the movie. It was incredibly hard work. A day of shooting usually lasted about 16 hours. It was hot, it was exhausting, it was repetitive, it was wonderful. Oh yeah, and the actresses were so hot. Seriously, the whole point of sharing all this with you is to make you understand what miracles have occurred in just the span of one generation. Look, I know that my life is not typical or average. In fact, it has been magical, but it is also real, and it is not unique. I'm hoping that my story will illustrate the changes we have already made in society are nothing less than astounding. But I must sound a note of caution that we still have a long way to go. We have promises to keep and miles to go before we sleep. You still hear people like Ann Coulter who call one another a retard as an insult. There are people like Nobel Prize winner Richard Dawkins who think that people like me should be terminated before we are ever born, because he believes we bring more suffering than happiness into the world. Those are people who think I am less than completely human. Those are people who ignore lives like mine. Those are people who would throw our lives away. Those are people who have not heard that research centered on people with Down syndrome will almost certainly lead to a cure to soft tissue cancer, which we develop far less often, and a cure for Alzheimer's disease, which we develop far more often than the rest of you. My message to Dr. Dawkins, and also those who are considering the termination of a child with Down syndrome, is you may know more than I do about a lot of things, but living a life with Down syndrome is not one of those things. My life is worth living. To those of you who are parents or grandparents of young children with Down syndrome, my message is: don't listen to the doubters and the fearful. Low expectations can be a greater barrier than Down syndrome will ever be. if I can be a writer, become a professional actor, and make millions of people think, imagine what the next generation will do. To those of you here to support GiGi's Playhouse, my message is God bless you and the miracles you are going to make possible with your generosity tonight. Let's open your hearts and our wallets, and let's find a whole generation of voices. Thank you. Thanks.
One more time, ladies and gentlemen, for Frank. Tough act to follow, my friend. Tough act to follow.